So Simon, we were really excited to have you here today to talk about your book and to celebrate, our mutual passion for the Amber Revolution, as you've aptly titled it. And so why don't you tell us a bit about the wine you brought that you've put in our glasses, and then also tell us a bit about the book.
Let me talk briefly about the book first, because and then that links to the wine a little bit. But I mean, very simply, the book, it was a response to the fact that there was no book. So 7 years ago, I tasted a wine from a wonderful winemaker called Banditskloof in Friuli, and it blew my mind. And I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand what on earth is this? Why is it this colour? Why does it taste different? Why does it smell different? And I couldn't really get enough answers. I found some articles on the internet. And I thought there must be a book. And I looked on Amazon and all those other places, and I couldn't find one. And it took me a few years, and eventually I got to the point of realising, okay, well, if no one else is going to write this book, then obviously I have to. What really excited me about these wines was not just how they taste and smell, but also the history and culture behind them. But the great thing was, when I wrote the book, I felt, okay, I also need to recommend some producers in this book. And that kind of rapidly ballooned into 180 producers, because I soon discovered that people are making amazing wines in this style on almost every corner of the planet. In fact, I've just been to Japan, and I discovered that there are the most beautiful, elegant orange wines being made in Japan, which I had no idea. So sadly, that's going to have to be for the second edition.
Right.
But so I was thinking about a wine to bring for this session, which was quite difficult. And I thought, well, it would be nice to bring something from the New World, just to make the point that although this is maybe an old world tradition, like all wine traditions, the New World has very much taken ownership of it. This is a wine from the Cape, from South Africa. It's made by a guy called Craig Hawkins. Testalonga is his project. Craig is unique. I mean, Craig pretty much introduced the idea of skin maceration in white wine to South Africa when he started doing it in 2008 or thereabouts. So he used to work for a winery called Lammerhoek, which is still going, although without him at the helm. And Testalonga was kind of his private project on the side in 2010 when he made this wine. And this is, Craig actually told me, this is the most extreme wine that he's ever made. So this was 2 years on its skins.
And for people who don't know Craig's wines, that's a statement in itself.
Normally these days he's making 3 or 4 orange wines every year with a few weeks maceration, some a bit less, some a bit more. But with this he decided to just push it as far as he possibly could. What he had at his disposal in this year was some oak barrels, and he actually took the tops off the barrels and put the grapes in, and then put the tops back on, and left it there for 2 years, more or less. And I suspect that it was close to undrinkable a year or two after the vintage. If there's one thing that Craig loves, it's acidity. He's obsessed about it. So, and for me, his wines, when they're young, they're often ferociously lean and acidic. But then when they age, they become absolutely beautiful. So this is 100% Chenin Blanc, 2 years on the skins, in oak, which he said he probably wouldn't repeat. He quite likes the idea of trying to do this style again, but if he did it now, he would do it in concrete, which is probably a bit more sympathetic. The other fun story is that in 2010, somehow he managed to get an export license for this wine. A year later, in 2011, the wine classification board in the Cape were fed up with him, and they started refusing to give his wines a license. So he rapidly got into the situation with this style of wine where he had orders, he'd already sold the wine overseas, and the wines were being denied their passport to leave the country because the authorities deemed them not representative, not fit for purpose. He was victorious in the end, so after his wines started getting refused their classification, their passport to leave the country, he and a group of his colleagues in the Swartland basically club together and petitioned the authorities, and they managed to get a new classification introduced for orange wines. I think technically they're called skin contact white wines in the legislation, and that was 2015. So that, I think, was the world's first official classification for orange wines. So it was actually quite historic.